Hello again, my little conscript, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we are going to be deep diving another 10th edition Imperial Guard datasheet. And in our crosshairs today, we have got the Leman Russ Commander. For a long time, this was one of only a very few ways that we could get tank orders into our Guard army. And the tank command had a bit of a troubled history throughout 10th edition with limited orders, not being able to order itself. How does it stack up in the new codex? Well, let me tell you, he is new and very much improved. And I think even with Rogal Dawn commanders taking the spotlight, the humble Leman Russ Commander still absolutely has a place in your army. So without further ado, let's not mess around any further. Let's mount up, roll out, and drive right into this thing. As is tradition, let us begin with a cheeky gander at the stat line. Unsurprisingly, the Leman Russ Commander has a pretty chonky stat line, and that's because he's not like an infantry officer, foot slogging it into battle, his feet actually touching the ground like some sort of peasant. He is riding into battle on his magnificent metal steed. Movement of 10 is great because it means that he will be able to keep up with the rest of the Guard motor pool. I think the vast majority of vehicles in our codex do have movement of 10. There are a few exceptions like Tauroxes, and you've got Sentinels which can scout forward and stuff like that. But this guy is really there to support your heavy armor thrusts, your fire bases, and movement of 10 is more than sufficient for that. As for his defensive profile, it's pretty decent. Toughness 11, a 2+ save and 13, which basically makes him immune to all but the most overwhelming barrages of small arms fire. He is still very susceptible to normal sort of anti-tank weapons, las cannons and their equivalent, and that's because he's only toughness 11. I say only because T11 is very good, but a lot of proper anti-tank weapons are strength 12 or higher. That means they're going to start wounding him on 3s, and that means more often than not, they do wound him. 2-up save with cover against anything A from -3 will mean he has a 4-up save, but 50-50? I'm not so sure about those odds. So long story short, he does have a good defensive profile, but he's not invincible, and concentrated, proper anti-tank will take him out. So don't be reckless with him. Leadership of 7 and objective control of 3 are totally fine. Pretty much standard issue for a Guard vehicle of this size. That just about wraps up the stat line, but now let's get into the unit composition and some of these war gear options. Unsurprisingly, the Leman Russ Commander unit consists of one Leman Russ Commander. If there's anything else in there, I probably would be a little bit surprised. And as standard, it comes equipped with a las cannon, a Leman Russ battle cannon, and armored tracks. Now, you're going to want to keep that las cannon, but we definitely want to swap out the battle cannon. Fortunately, the Leman Russ Tank Commander has access to all of the Leman Russ weapons. Not just all the sponsors and stuff, but all of the main guns as well. So you can swap out the battle cannon for a Demolisher battle cannon, an Eradicator Nova cannon, Executioner plasma cannon, Exterminator autocannon, Punisher Gatling cannon, and Vanquisher battle cannon. Now, it might be a little bit overwhelming and a little bit confusing to know which one to pick if you are a new player. One thing that's very, very important to understand, though, and something I do see a lot of new players get wrong, is it doesn't matter which one of these weapons you pick. It's not going to give you the ability of that weapon from the other Leman Russ datasheet. So what I mean by that is, if you pick an Exterminator autocannon for your tank commander doesn't get the Withering Hail ability where you can add extra AP. That doesn't happen. If you pick a Vanquisher cannon, he's not going to get the inbuilt reroll to wound against vehicles or monsters. Those abilities are linked to the Leman Russ Exterminator datasheet, the Leman Russ Vanquisher datasheet, and so on and so forth. The tank commander has his own ability, which we will be getting into a little bit later on. Now, that actually is a very important thing to understand because it's going to massively influence which one of these weapons we are going to take. Now, traditionally, the go-to weapon of the tank commander was the Demolisher battle cannon. That's pretty much been the case through, well, I feel like 8th and 9th and most of 10th. However, the Demolisher has been heavily nerfed in the Codex. And what's changed is the number of shots it's had has been reduced by 2. So it used to be a 24-inch range, blast weapon, D6 plus 3 shots, and then strength 14, AP minus 3, damage D6. It's now gone down to D6 plus 1 shots. That might not seem like a big deal, but it really, really is. One of the big weaknesses of the Demolisher was that it had D6 damage, which meant it was very, very swingy. Sometimes it would do 6 damage, sometimes it would do 1 damage. But one of the things that kind of kept it in the running was the fact that even if the damage was a bit swingy, the number of shots you got was fairly reliable, with a minimum of 4 and an average of 6 to 7. Now, your minimum is 2, and your average is like 4 shots. It's just bad. And there's a real chance that if you only get 2 shots, and you finally get all the way through, you roll your damage, and you're like a 1. So, I no longer think that the Demolisher battle cannon is the way to go. I want to make a side note here and a little bit of a future proofing. There are some people that think this is a mistake because things like Space Marines and other factions that have access to Demolisher cannons, their codex have come out before ours and they still had D6 plus 3 shots. If Demolisher cannon gets FAQ'd back to having D6 plus 3, then it becomes the go-to weapon again. So if you're watching this a little bit later on and you're like, Mordian, what you're on about, it's got D6 plus 3 again, then this is kind of like to cover that eventuality. But right now, at the time of recording, it's D6 plus 1, it's too swingy on the front end, it's too swingy on the back end, so I don't recommend it. I would also avoid things like the Exterminator autocannon because it's only AP minus 1, so it's going to struggle to really deal with cover. Same with the battle cannon, that's why I don't recommend the battle cannon. AP minus 1 is just a bit of a pisser. For me, I think it's a choice between the plasma cannon, or I should say the executioner plasma cannon, and controversial choice here, but the Vanquisher cannon. I think which one of these weapons you pick is actually going to come down to which detachment you are in. So if you're in a combined arms detachment, I think the Executioner Plasma Cannon is the new go-to. That's because it's got the good old D6 plus 3 shots, it's got a good AP of minus 3, and it's got a solid flat damage 3. It's also got a decent range at 36 inches, and it still has blast. The only problem with the Executioner is its strength of 8, which means it struggles against a lot of enemy armor. But if you are in the Combined Arms detachment, your tank commander does have the squadron keyword, so he will benefit from lethal hits against enemy vehicles and monsters, and that really helps overcome this limitation in strength. So, like I said, Combined Arms, go Executioner Plasma Cannon. If you're not in Combined Arms, again, I know this is a bit of a spicy take, but I would go for the Vanquisher Battle Cannon. Yes, it's only 1 shot, but it does have the native Strength 18. So even if it doesn't have the inbuilt reroll to wound that the regular Leman Russ Vanquisher has as part of its datasheet ability, it's still going to wound more often than not. And it's got the AP-4, and it's got the phenomenal D6 plus 6 damage. I still think most people will just default to Executioner in all detachments, but I would not overlook the Vanquisher. Keep it in the back of your mind. Try it out. I've been using these things a lot in 10th edition after my community base said, Mordian, you are overlooking these things. They are really decent. And ever since I converted to the cult of the Vanquisher Battle Cannon, it's been tough to come away. He just... Strength 18 minus 4, D6 plus 6. It's a hell of a drug. Once you have decided which of the main guns to go for, it's time to look at the bonus firepower we get with this tank. Now, it comes with a las cannon, and you can swap that out for heavy bolter or heavy flamer. Like I said before, you don't really want to do that. Both of these weapons are just fundamentally weaker. Going over to the sponsons, we have a choice of 2 heavy bolters, 2 heavy flamers, 2 multi-melters, or 2 plasma cannons. Following the same logic as with this one, I don't think you go heavy bolters. I don't think we go heavy flamers. I think it's a choice of multi-melters or plasma cannons. I think both of these are great choices. It just comes down to personal preference. Multi-melters have the potential to do a lot more damage. Plasma cannons tend to be a little bit more reliable and have got a much longer range. I like plasma cannons because I tend to find that they're firing from the very beginning of the game. That 36-inch range just means that the moment the enemy pops out, we're firing. So I tend to find I get to fire my plasma cannon sort of 4 or 5 times over the course of the game. For multi-melters, it's more like 2 or 3. So you make the decision what you want. Do you want to have fewer chances to shoot but maybe more damage? Or do you want more chances to shoot but maybe less damage each time you do shoot? And just sort of bringing up both of those weapons side by side, you can see that the plasma cannon does have double the range of the multi-melter. But it doesn't have quite as much strength, although strength 8, strength 9 doesn't make a huge difference because most big vehicles are like toughness 10 or above. So really it comes down to more like the AP and the damage D6 versus the damage 2. So it's player preference on this front. If you're a new player, try both and see which one you end up enjoying more. As for the heavy stubber versus the storm bolter, always go for the stubber. Firstly, it's cooler because you can quote Black Hawk Down and be like, get on that 50! Someone get on that 50! And also, it's just got much better stat lines. Basically, more shots, more range, more everything. And then take the Hunter Killer Missile because it's free, and if you leave it at home, you don't get any advantage for doing that. Now that we've picked our weapons, it's time to delve into the abilities. This is what really separates the Leman Russ Commander from the other Leman Russ variants. Firstly, he has the faction ability Voice of Command. This means that he can do orders, and he can do 2 orders to squadron units. Praise be to the Emperor. If you're someone who's jumping on guard with the Codex, you're not going to understand how much of a big deal this is. For pretty much all of 10th edition so far, with that bloody index, we've only been able to do 1 order, and the tank commander's not even been able to order himself. Now he can do 2 orders, and he can order himself. So what this means is that basically, he orders himself, and he's going to order 1 other tank. This not only improves his own capabilities, but also allows him to act as a force multiplier. It's just so good. It's just really good. If you're curious about what orders are good with tank commanders, pretty much the default one is take aim, because you can see a lot of his weapons only hit on 4s. That's not ideal. Get him to hit on 3s. It's huge. And so you can have him and another tank, maybe another Leman Russ, maybe a Rogel Dawn, but you can have both of them with take aim, hitting on 3+, and that affects all of their weapons, and it just starts hammering the foe into the ground. Double order tank commanders is one of the biggest changes, and it is one of the most important changes. It will fundamentally shape the guard meta, and it might even have a wider impact on the meta as a whole as guard commanders start to bring even more armor. Up until this point, most guard armies were featuring 4 vehicles because that was essentially the most you could get with orders efficiently, having them all ordered efficiently. Now, it's super duper easy and straightforward for guard commanders to bring 6 tanks, have them all ordered up, and they're still going to have plenty of points left over for infantry and artillery and secondary game. So this is a really big deal. It affects us, but it also affects the whole game. Very, very exciting times. I like it. Speaking of orders, though, we have our second ability, VoxNet, which means we can do orders up to 12 inches away. I really like this, because especially when you take into account that this is double that of an infantry officer, and then you've got the size of the Leman Russ hull, and you can measure from any point on the Russ's hull, so not the tip of the barrel, so no using your vanquisher to extend this even further, but you can measure from any point on the hull, and then it's 12 inches. It actually creates quite a large bubble. It's not as far as a massive Vox, though. You will find your tanks need to stay relatively close together, but they're not all jammed together in a big parking lot, which could make them susceptible to all being tied up by some sort of big enemy unit. So it's nice. Gives you a little bit of flexibility. Last but certainly not least, we have got the tank commander's unique datasheet ability. This is what he gets instead of things like Withering Hail and the reroll from like being a Vanquisher tank. And this is Death Befitting an Officer. When this model is destroyed, you roll 1d6 on a 2+, do not move from play. It can, after the attacking monster is finished making its attacks, shoot as if it were your shooting phase, as if it had full wounds remaining. This model is then removed from play. This ability is basically the same as it was in the Index. However, it has indirectly changed quite a lot since we first saw this at the beginning of 10th edition. First thing to bear in mind is that you cannot use this ability if you die from melee. So if someone charges into your tank command and kills it, you can't use it. This is because of a change to the core rules that is covered in the rules commentary. Because essentially, shooting as if it were your shooting phase is not the same as shooting in your actual shooting phase. It's a whole thing about out of phase things that happen. Look, it's stupid. It's really stupid. This change in the rules commentary causes so many people to play this wrong. But long story short, just trust me. It's a big nerf, I know, but if your tank commander dies in melee, he cannot use his Death Befitting an Officer ability. It all comes down to how the rules commentary and out of phase rules works with the big guns never tire core rule. It's a whole mess. But the end result is, if you die in melee, no Death Befitting an Officer. Now that's obviously a bit of a pisser, but you can play around that and hopefully you can screen your tanks effectively so they're not getting killed in melee. There is another thing that is a good thing that makes this ability kind of unique. So there are a number of fight on death and shoot on death abilities throughout 40k. Most of them say that you have to fight back or shoot back at the unit that shot at you and killed you. It's like a retaliation. It's like a reprisal. Death Befitting an Officer is unique. It doesn't say you have to shoot at what shot you. This is phenomenally powerful because it means that, let's say the enemy's got 2 tanks that are shooting at you. They shoot you with 1 and it kills your tank commander. You then trigger Death Befitting an Officer. You don't then need to shoot that first tank that's already shot. It's already done its job. You could shoot at the second one. And if you shoot that second one, you could kill it before it even gets a chance to fire back. It makes it really difficult for your opponent because they have to make some difficult choices. And they have to sort of make sure that your tank commander isn't going to go after something different that could completely screw their plans over. It's very, very powerful, and it's a very, very unique distinction of Death Befitting Officer. I'm sure there are a few other examples you could point to in 40k, but it's a really, really big one, and it makes a huge difference. One more thing to mention about Death Befitting an Officer is that you still get the benefit of your order, because orders last till your next command phase. So what this means is if you gave your tank take aim in your turn, and then it dies in your opponent's turn, and it triggers Death Befitting an Officer, you still benefit from take aim on this last hurrah. So when you're doing your Death Befitting Officer attacks, you would be hitting on 3s because you count as 4 wounds, not 4s, not 5s. So that's, again, a real tricky one for your opponent to deal with. And yes, you also, if you're in the Combined Arms attachment, do benefit from your lethals, because that is anytime you make a ranged attack. However, Death Befitting an Officer is a bit of a funny ability in my opinion, because it's one of those ones that you almost never want to have to call upon. Because first and foremost, your tank commander is a force multiplier. He is there to order himself, and he is there to order the tanks around him. If he dies, sure, he gets to do a big screw you to your opponent, but it would be better if he was still around to keep doing his 2 orders. Fortunately, if you're in the Combined Arms detachment, which I think a lot of people are still going to use that as their go-to because it's a very, very strong detachment, you are less at risk of your chain of command being disrupted. Because look at this guy. We've just been praising this unit for very good reason. But your opponent is going to know what tank commanders are like, and they're going to go after them as a matter of course. They are a high priority target for your opponent. That means that when these guys die, you can start finding your tanks without orders, and that's going to really affect your firepower, your damage output. Don't panic. If your tank commander dies, if you're in the Combined Arms detachment, there is a stratagem that lets your infantry officers start ordering your tanks. This is very, very important because it essentially means that no matter what your opponent does, he can't get in the way of the tank orders. He can't get in the way of the force multipliers, and your firepower can just keep on trucking. It's nice. It means that when your tank commanders die, it's not the end of the world. It's another really, really big change that has happened around the tank commander that they benefit from. Because a lot of people are going to be looking at this and say, well, Mordian, the datasheet is basically the same, except for just 2 orders. I mean, isn't that just like the big deal? You know, couldn't this video been like 1 minute long? But it's everything that's connected around the tank commander that's now feeding in. There's a lot less points of failure in the guard now. And the tank commander itself is one because it can do 2 orders. It can order a lot more units. But also there's things around the tank commander that if he goes down, they can come in and they can keep you moving forward, keep you fighting fit. Overall, I think that the Leman Russ commander is still a really viable, really strong unit that you are going to want in your guard army. They bring plenty of firepower. They bring plenty of orders, they create dilemmas for your opponents, and fundamentally, they're just a big old tank. And big old tanks are what make the guard fun. Well, at least that's what I think. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. What is your favorite weapon to give the tank commander now in the face of the Demolisher nerf? And what do you think about the Russ tank commander versus the Rogal Dawn tank commander? Do you think that the additional points cost is worth it? Or do you think tank commander is already expensive enough as it is and you're just trying to get those orders in where you can for as cheap as possible? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.